Greetings, this is Renwar 2005 coming to you from WoW TCG Talks again. I'm going to continue with the series that we were talking about in the last video about what decks to run in a raid setting in WoW TCG. In the previous video I discussed what it takes to be a good healer, what kind of cards that you need, and I gave you a nice little deck profile example to go on. So I'm going to reiterate on, again, just briefly on what you need to be successful in raiding. We've had, again, a lot of questions about how to successfully run a raid without getting overwhelmed. And so we're going to talk about the different kinds of control decks that you can run. So again, your group makeup in WoW TCG raiding is very important, just like it is in the online game. So you must have a good healer if you want to be able to compete in a raid. Now, a control is probably your second most important, but it's not as important as a healer. But there are some players who prefer to play a control style game in a trading card game, and so we're going to cover really the best control class that you can be within a raid setting. So when you're playing against a raid, you need to have good card draw, and you need to also have good ally control, as well as being able to interrupt cards that are coming into play from the raid deck. So a mage plays into that perfectly. It gives you the aspects of controlling allies, interrupting cards, and drawing cards. So this is just a deck profile example of what has had some success in raid content. Now, what's really cool about control decks is you're not limited to just a mage. I've seen great control rogues, different styles of mages. I've even seen shamans be control decks, priest. There's various types of control decks that you can play. The better player you are, the more you're going to be able to be, the more different classes you're going to be able to use in the control manner. But let's just cover the basic control that has the most options. So we're going to look at a mage. I'm using Jaina Proudmoore here. Her basic flip is you pay 3. And it's kind of hard to read here, but when an opposing hero or ally would be dealt damage, frost damage, by Jaina, it's dealt that much +1 instead. It's not really a control based card, but it's a basic good mage hero. So we're going to cover the card draw first, because card draw is always going to be important for raiding, regardless of what spec you're going for: healing, control, DPS, or tank. Alright, so with the mage, we have Spark of Brilliance, draw 2 cards, put a card from your hand on top of your deck. Mana Agate, it's an ongoing. Pay 1, destroy it, draw 2 cards. You have Shroud of the Archmage, which is an ability that attaches to your hero, and you can tap it to draw a card, but there's some other abilities associated with this too. You can tap your hero again. Your hero can deal 4 fire damage, or you can tap it and target ally can't attack or protect this turn. It's really good for control for the card draw, the damage, and the ally control. Then you have a preparation card. Now, preparation is a little bit more advanced card that you've only seen in one deck. Preparation on your first turn, you may play this card without paying its cost. So you have to have it in your opening hand to be able to play without paying its cost. Otherwise, you have to pay 2 in this case to put it into play later. But when Arcane Intuition enters play, you draw a card. It also increases your maximum hand size by 1. So you can stack this and have multiples. Some of the draw quest. Forces of Jaedenar, you pay 1. If you play an ability this turn, you complete this quest and you draw a card. And then you have Siege of the Demise. You pay nothing and you can delve. So where that can become important is you can control your next card draw. Same with Spark of Brilliance. It's a little bit different kind of delve. So for example, you can delve, pop your Mana Agate for later, and know what your top card's going to be. Alright, so we're going to look at the ally control next. So raids are going to throw a lot of different variations of allies at you. Most of them are tokens when bosses come into play, but there's also some other gauntlets where they come into play at the start of the next boss, and you can get a lot out in one turn. So, for example, Molten Core, uh, Black Temple does this as well. Those two gauntlets. If you have a long boss fight, they build up resources, and those resources are actually allies. And so when you kill that boss, those resources come into play, and you flip them, and they have ally effects. And so sometimes you can have 3 to 6 allies coming in on the next boss turn after that flip happens. So if your group is not really able to control the allies that come into play, you can actually lose a party member on that next boss's turn when those allies can swing. All right, so Glacial Tomb, you can just attach it to an ally, and that ally can't attack or exhaust while that is attached. Probably the most powerful mage card that you can have that's ongoing is the Water Elemental. In some cases, if you're playing against an automated raid, and you can have ways of protecting the elemental, it can actually break it to where the automated can't attack anymore the rest of the game. But it's a frost hero required. You can tap the elemental, deals 1 frost damage to each opposing hero and ally. A character dealt damage this way can't attack this turn. It's extremely powerful ally control. Now, the ability version of this is Frost Nova. It does the exact same thing, but it's not an ongoing ally. Whiteout is also one of those cards that can break an automated. Your hero deals 3 frost damage to each opposing hero and ally. Ongoing, opposing heroes and allies can't attack unless their controller plays 1 for each attacker. Well, in an automated, they don't have any resources, so they can't pay for that attacker, and that's why it breaks it. But in a normal raid, this can cause issues for the raid boss trying to use resources to attack. So if they have a lot of allies in play, it's 3 frost damage that can come in. It can either usually wipe them out, or they can't attack because they can't pay the resources. Very similar to Glacial Tomb, but you can polymorph. Polymorph is actually very powerful against man raids because they can shut off powers. So you can attach it to an ally. They can't attack or protect, but they also lose all powers, and there's also a sheep. So if there's an ongoing effect on an ally that's very detrimental to your raid, you can just polymorph them, and they lose their ongoing effect. Now, this ability is not necessarily ally control, although it can be used against allies, but this is more of a universal between ability, ally, and equipment and resources that have powers. Spell Suppression shuts those powers off. So it's a very good card for controlling any kind of negative powers coming at you. But you attach target ability, ally, equipment, or resource. Attached cards lose powers and loses and can't have powers. Alright, so now we're going to talk about some of the protection that your hero can have, along with some of the interrupts that are necessary against a raid. So a raid, like Naxxramas, has things like Shadow Fissure. You can look at an automated like, I believe it's Caverns of Time has Distortion Bomb. Deathwing has Barrel Roll. There's always some key cards that you just don't like to see happen to your raid during the course of whatever raid. With Onyxia, it's Burniate because it destroys everything. You want to be able to interrupt those kind of cards, otherwise it can reset your entire party's board for several turns to recover. So we have Counterspell, basic interrupt target ability. You have Nether Fissure. Nether Fissure can't be interrupted. That's important because a lot of times the raid boss is expecting for an interrupt to happen. So they'll actually back their own card up with their own interrupt. So Nether Fissure helps you not be interrupted on that kind of combo and interrupts target card. Some of the protection with this deck is you can ice block. Oftentimes when a raid is getting heavily controlled by a control deck like a mage, they become the main focus or the pseudo main tank. They have all the aggro. So ice block becomes important just because it protects you from massive amounts of attack damage from them trying to kill you if you've gained aggro. But you play it, prevent all damage that would be dealt to your hero. You can't play cards while you're ice blocked. At the start of your turn, you destroy ice block. Typically, you're using it on your opponent's turn anyway, because they might be swinging at you for 10 or 15 damage for that turn, and you just play Ice Block and they can't deal any damage to you. Another form of prevention that's also damage is Ice Barrier. It's kind of hard to read here because of the resolution. I'll do the best here to read it. This ability enters play with 3 ice counters. If your hero would be dealt damage, remove an ice counter from this ability. If you do, prevent that damage. Then, if no ice counters remain, destroy this ability. At the start of your turn, your hero deals 5 frost damage to target opposing hero. And if Jaina is flipped, then you're going to gain +1 to that, so you'll be dealing 6 a turn. And Enduring Winter is a great card for protecting Ice Barrier. So what it does is attached to target ability or equipment, attached card can't be destroyed. Typically, you're playing Enduring Winter on top of Ice Barrier in this case, so you can prevent damage and also make sure that when those counters disappear, it's no longer preventing damage once the counters disappear, but then it can't be destroyed after that's effect. So you're still doing the 6 damage or 5 damage a turn, even though there's no counters on it. How a boss can get around this, though, is they can actually destroy Enduring Winter to get to the Ice Barrier next. Alright, so that's a brief description of a control mage. I will include it in the description below this video, so you can copy it and use it in your raid nights if you want to. I'm going to show you, however, another control deck that is Shaman based, just to kind of give you some variance. Now, this Shaman hits a lot harder than this Mage and doesn't have as much control aspects, but there's still quite a bit of control, but this one hits a little bit harder. And typically the control decks that can hit hard have less control abilities the more damage you put in it. However, this deck has proven that it's very frustrating for raids, and you are playing this more as a control than a damage. You typically don't start doing damage with this deck until beyond turn 7. But let's get into it real quick. The hero we're using is I don't even know how to pronounce it. Janvaru the Thunderspeaker. And you pay 4 to flip him, choose 1. He deals 4 nature damage to target hero, or he heals 4 damage from himself. That's a pretty helpful ability. Surprisingly enough, you use this more in raiding for the healing, but this is a good also PvP deck, and you use it the damage more in PvP, more healing in the raiding. Again, card draw is essential in raiding because the games can last so long, and you don't want to have no cards in hand in late stages of the game when the raid's actually getting harder. So my quest I use for card draw is Question of Gluttony. You pay 1 less to complete this quest for each card in hand. Pay 7 to complete this quest. So essentially, if start of the turn, if you got 7 cards in your hand, you can draw for free. Again, Forces of Jaedenar, which we explained in the Mage deck, is also in this deck. But probably your most important card draw is Tuskar's Kite. So you play this as an ongoing ability, exhaust an ally you control, put the 10th card from the top of your deck into your hand. That's a continual card draw, either on your opponent's turn or your turn, if it's not non-exhausted. Alright, so let's talk about the control. Now we're going to look at the ally control first. Squall Totem. When this ability enters play and it's instant, exhausts all opposing heroes and allies. When an opposing hero or ally attacks or protects, you may exhaust a second target hero or ally. It pairs well with the next card, called Wavestorm Totem. Ongoing, when an opposing hero, ally, or equipment readies, put it into its owner's hands. So what you do is you instantly play Squall Totem on your opponent's turn to exhaust their allies and hero. And then on your turn, you play Wavestorm. So at the end of their turn, or when your turn ends and they ready their allies, Wavestorm will actually put all of those allies back into their hand. Now, if you're playing a raid that is bringing tokens into play or is playing other tokens from the resource row, if it comes back into their hand, it actually destroys them because tokens can't go to hand. So it's a good way of just outright destroying their allies. The next piece of equipment Leggings of the Tireless Sentry. Opposing heroes and allies enter play exhausted. At the end of each opponent's turn, exhaust all heroes and allies he controls. So again, this pairs well with Wavestorm, which will put them back into his hand. Thunderstorm. Exhaust all opposing heroes and allies. Your hero deals 1 nature damage to each of them. Ready a resource for each character dealt damage this way. So if they got 4 allies out and you play that card, you're going to exhaust them all, and then you're going to re-ready all 4 of the resources you just played to play this card, and have you ready for an interrupt or dispel or something else that you may want to play. And then again, since you're exhausting them, Wavestorm puts them back into their hand. Now we're going to look at this location, Eye of the Storm. When you play a card, you add an honor counter. You can tap this card and remove 4 honor counters. And you can exhaust up to 4 target heroes and or allies. Again, that will pair well with Wavestorm. So it's a great exhaust destruction combo. Now let's look at the ability control. Elemental Purge. Destroy target ability. If you do, your hero deals 3 nature damage to that ability's controller's hero. So you got some ability destruction here, but here's your interrupt, because interrupts are always important. Choose one or both. Interrupt target ability or exhaust target hero or ally. So not only can you interrupt the abilities come into play, but then you can exhaust a hero or ally. Well, if you're exhausting an ally, again, it's pairing with Wavestorm. Now, piece of armor, Voice of Reason. Your hero has -2 for each 5 damage on it. Your hero has Protector while you control no damaged allies. Now, I want you to notice the only allies that you're playing, there's 3. You have this totem here, and it is an ability, but totems are considered targetable like allies. So it will be paired with Voice of Reason since it's considered an ally and has health. Well, if something deals any kind of damage to Squall Totem, it's going to die. So there's never going to be any damage on Squall. It's either going to be at Fatal or have one that's not damaged. Same with Wavestorm. The only ally that has more than 4 health is your Great Elec, which we'll cover in a minute, but it has 4 health. So the only way a mount, which this is a mount, can be dealt damage is with non-combat damage. Mounts are elusive and cannot be hit by allies, so they're rarely ever damaged. Now, your hero will have Protector the majority of the time that this is in play, because you rarely ever have damaged allies in play. They're either destroyed and have no allies, or the ones that are in play either can't be attacked or gets destroyed in 1 hit. So you're almost always going to have Protector with this out in the field. So if someone's being attacked and you've got some health that you can spare, you can actually protect them as a Shaman. Now, if you become the aggro target, if the raid is just tired of you controlling them and they start to focus on you, you can actually heal yourself and alleviate some of the healing that your healer may have to do to you through this equipment. Now, this is probably the most powerful card in the deck. And in raiding, it's almost instantly destroyed, because the raid cannot afford you to have this in play. But it's called Legacy of the Horde. If a friendly hero or ally would deal damage, it deals that much. It deals double that much instead. So when it says friendly, all of your, not just your party, but your healer, your DPS, everyone on your team is affected by this card because it says friendly, not that you control. So you're doubling everyone's damage. And in the second half, if a friendly hero or ally would be dealt damage, prevent half of it rounded up. So not only are you doubling their damage, but you're preventing half of their damage they're taking as well. When you play this card, if the raid actually can't destroy it, your damage is about to start getting ramped. Not just yours, but everyone else's. They cannot afford to have this in play, so you have to have, if you want it to stay in play, you need to be ready to play Wind Shear to interrupt any ability destruction that the raid might be trying to play to get rid of it. So it's good to have Wind Shear to back up your legacy. But don't be surprised if legacy gets destroyed. If anything, it's taking a destruction ability or an interrupt out of your opponent's hand that could have been used against a heal or something more vital. Alright, so now we're going to go into the damage. There's a lot of ways this deck can do damage, used for either direct damage or even control. So we're going to look at the Great Elec first. Now the description here is blurred, but what it says is you pay 1 less to complete quest. When you play a resource face up this turn, if your hero would deal damage, it deals that much plus 2 instead. So when you play Eye of the Storm, Forces of Jaedenar, or Question of Gluttony at the start of your turn, placing those resources face up, any non-combat damage you're going to do is going to be added plus 2 on top of that. So we'll refer back to that in a second. So now your quests and locations have become a weapon. We have Lightning Arc. Your hero deals 3 nature damage divided as you choose to any number of target heroes and or allies. We're going to come back to this because it's very similar to Call of Lightning, and I'll explain how these can be used. Then you have Lightning Overload. When you play a non-ongoing ability, destroy Lightning Overload. If you do, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So where this is useful is on Lightning Arc. It's a non-ongoing, so when you play it, it's going to double it. You can use it on Call of Lightning, which we'll cover next. You can use it on Elemental Purge. You can even use it on Wind Shear. Those are your technically you could even use it on Thunderstorm. Those are all your non-ongoing abilities. They're all destructive and not good against your opponent. Call of Lightning. Your hero does 5 damage divided as you choose to any number of target heroes and or allies. It's the same as Lightning Arc, but just more powerful. So how this can be used is it can be used as direct damage. So you can say, okay, I'm going to play Lightning Overload, and then I'm going to play Call of Lightning. So now you're going to deal 5 damage, split to how you want. So if you just want to deal 5 damage to the hero because there's no allies in play, you deal 5 damage. Then it copies and it's going to deal another 5 damage. Or let's say there's 4 allies in play. You can say, okay, I'm going to deal 2 damage to this ally, 2 damage to this ally, and 1 damage to that ally. Okay? And then let's say Legacy of the Horde is out. Well, then you're going to double that 2 damage, 2 damage, 1 to 4 damage, 4 damage, 2. And you can actually, it's like a chain lightning in the actual online game, to where it changed, it hits multiple targets. So you can, if you can't control them with Wavestorm, Squall Totem, you can actually blow them up with this ability or with Lightning Arc. Alright, so the last card we're going to cover is Merciless Gladiator's Gavel. If your hero would deal non-combat damage, it deals that much. It deals double that much instead. And I just realized we're missing a card. So as I'm talking about this, I'll try to find it real quick. So it's very similar to your Legacy of the Horde. The card we're missing is Spark. There it is. So we'll come back to that next. So if your hero would deal non-combat damage, it deals that much. It deals double that much instead. This can actually stack with Legacy of the Horde. So if you were to play Call of Lightning with the Gavel out, it's going to deal 10 instead of 5. If you have the Gavel and Legacy out, it's going to go 5, 10, 20 damage for Call of Lightning. So it's a very good card. So if they're destroying your Legacy, you still have a way of pumping your damage with the Gavel that's a little bit harder to destroy as an equipment. Last card is Spark. Now this is a little bit confusing, but you can actually exhaust, when it comes into play, exhaust a card you control. This hero deals 1 fire damage to target hero or ally. So what this can do is, let's say you have the Great Elec out, and then you, for your resource, you play Eye of the Storm. So then Elec is going to pump the non-combat damage by +2. And then let's say you have the Gavel out. Well, now the non-combat damage is going to be doubled from that 1. It's going to go 1 +2, 3. And then now it's going to be doubled to 6. So let's say you have the Gavel out. You can exhaust the Gavel. And now that's going to do 6 damage to a target hero or ally. but then you can exhaust your hero. There's another 6. You can exhaust Tuskers, 6. You get the idea. So you can ramp your damage exhausting other cards you control, because Spark turns all of your non-exhausted cards into non-combat damage. So that is a brief description of what some of the control decks can do. The easier one of these two is obviously the Mage. And again, both deck descriptions will be in the description. But if you're having trouble with raiding, remember, it's always good to start with a healer, have a good control, and then we'll cover DPS in the next video. But I appreciate your time. Be sure to subscribe and comment if you have questions, and have a good day.